Still with us, attorneys Alicia Dern and David Bruno. And before we start discussing, I just want to clarify. I misspoke accidentally and said that this defendant is accused of killing 3 victims. What I intended to say was of shooting and injuring 3 victims. They were not killed by gunfire. All right, let's start with you, David, if we could, please. Is this compelling testimony? I think it's important, but is it compelling as he tells about the training of law enforcement?
Yeah, also, Ashley, they weren't hit. Those 3 individuals were not hit. There's testimony yesterday from one individual saying it could have been 1 or 2 inches away from being hit. But, you know, that's the interesting part about this case. I mean, you have other police officers that were shooting into the suspects or Breonna Taylor, for example. And this is the only one on trial for shooting that went stray, right? Look, is this important? It's important, but I don't think the prosecutor's doing much good from it. I mean, they're just pretty much throwing everything at the wall, just showing everything. There's not much information about what actually is taught in these classes. You know, this is a law enforcement officer, so we could assume that they've gone through all these trainings. I think if I was on the defense side, what I would do is I would just narrow down, like, where is it that they're talking about execution of search warrants? Because look, these other police officers, they were in the same house. They made the same decision to fire their weapons. You heard his audio in testimony already saying there's fire. He thought there was a rifle on the radio in the house. You know, he's in the house with other police officers acting the same exact way. And the only difference is that the projectiles were fired a different way from the other police officers. So is this important? I guess it is, but it's really just, it's like watching paint dry at the way that the prosecutor is presenting this evidence. And
David Bruno, you keep me honest, and I mean that in a good way, because you're right. That's what the charges are. So let me just clarify all of this, because we know this is the only law enforcement officer that is charged in connection with the death of Breonna Taylor. It is not about the death of Breonna Taylor itself, but rather that he was there, that he was part of this group executing a warrant, that he then fired shots. And to your point, yes, the wanton endangerment in the first degree. So thank you. I want to make sure all those facts are correct. Alicia, some of the other testimony yesterday, though, was pictures of where shell casings were located and then identified and matched forensically. And there were shell casings out in the parking lot at the back of cars on the ground from the defendant's gun, implying that he shot his gun from way back in the parking lot versus down the outside foyer that went to the 2 front doors. All of that evidence together, is that something that might convince a jury that he did not fire in compliance with police training?
Yes, I think that's much better evidence than what we were just watching. I mean, yes, we can assume that he was trained, and the prosecution, I think, was not doing a good job presenting any of this testimony. She's just having the witness read, which is generally, I think, a bad trial tactic. The location of the shells is much more interesting and I think much more relevant, because now you're painting a picture of the police officer just basically spraying his gun everywhere without any regard to human life in an apartment building.
And it looks like cross-examination may be about to start. So let's take this opportunity. You're both going to stay with us. When we come back, we'll go back live into that courtroom in this trial.